is, I hate that. So much of what we hear from residents and stakeholders is, well, how come this and how come that? And so much of it pertains to what happens in our court systems, or they can explain to you why things take the time that they take, or why, if you don't already know, if you haven't already caught that in these most recent classes, you'll definitely get an understanding of the court's process and how it relates to code enforcement. All right, so you should know these by heart by now, but just in case you don't, please do keep your microphones muted until you have been asked, called on to answer a question, ask a question, or otherwise instructed by the instructors. If you don't have a pen and paper or pencil and an envelope to write on, or whatever it is that you keep your notes in, if you don't have that, this is a good time to run and grab it, because I'm saying something that you've already heard before, and we probably have another minute or two before we get started with the instruction. At the end of the class or at the designated time, if you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand to be placed in the queue. I'll show you how to do that shortly. Please be sure to keep any questions that you have brief and relevant to course content. I'm not even going to elaborate there, because I think by now everybody knows your questions have to be relevant to course content, and they're even better if they are beneficial to the entire class. That means not those personal questions that you can ask the instructor on your own, or you can ask your council member, or you can ask your whoever comes to your MPU meeting, etc. Those kinds of questions that aren't really helpful for the whole class, we ask that you save those for after the class. But if you have a question that either pertains to the course content or that everyone in the room could benefit from, please do ask that question briefly. Of course, your camera has to be turned on throughout the class in order to receive course credit. We have to see your face so that we know that you are here and learning what is being shared, so we know that you are present fully and engaged, fully engaged. That's the only way to get credit for this class. To raise your hand, at the bottom of your screen, you should see a button that says reactions. If you click on that button, you will see a small little pop-up box, and at the bottom of that small pop-up box, there will be a button that says raise hand. If you click that, you will raise your hand. You can also click it to lower your hand, or you can find your hand in the participants log and lower your hand there, or we can lower your hand. Don't worry about the lowering part, but if you'd like to raise your hand, click on reactions, see the pop-up, and click on raised hand. I believe that is it for me. We're going to introduce our instructors, and I will do a quick check to find out if Deputy Solicitor Erica Smith is ready.
I am ready.
Lovely. I was on top of my stalling game this morning. All right. So Samantha is going to go ahead and introduce our instructors. I am very, very happy to have these good folks with us. We have some of the most amazing staff in all of our court, I'm saying all of our court systems, but in our courts, in the solicitor's office, in the municipal court, and public defender's office. We have really, really amazing staff that's so committed to the community and to the public. You may see these folks out and about at some of your community meetings, your MPU meetings, at other events around the city. They show up and they come out. They are engaged in the community and they care about the work they do. So I'm very excited to have them with us today, and very grateful that they will be presenting and instructing us this morning. All right, Samantha.
So we have from the Office of the Solicitor, the Deputy Solicitor, Erica Smith, who will actually be going first. And then actually from the Office of Public Defender, Brian, can you introduce, we have Kenneth Days III, who is the Director and Chief Public Defender, but presenting, Brian, who's presenting? Brian, where are you? I'll come back to Brian. From the municipal court, we have the Deputy Chief Court Administrator, Brandy Reeves Esquire. Courtney Smith, and Trevi Ann Thompson, who will be presenting today. So I'm actually have to stop. Brian, where's Brian?
Samantha, who is Brian? There's no Brian here. I don't
Wait,
think Brian is. But let's go ahead with Erica while you figure that out, please.
oh, no.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am, you can.
Okay, it's
Not Brian, it was Henry. I'm
do you
sorry.
hear an echo?
I do hear an echo, Erica, and I think that if that 470 is you, you should unmute that and then turn your camera on your computer, on your laptop. Put the camera on the laptop and the unmute and mute, yeah, there, and then mute that right there, and then unmute the phone. And that's *6, I think, to unmute the phone. Hit *6. You should hear it say you are unmuted or something like that. You are now on. There you go.
Okay, can you guys hear me now?
Now we can. Yes.
Okay, so, all right, we're having some issues over here because I'm actually logged in at two places because I couldn't hear you all. Ms. Terry, can you start? And I can't share my screen. So, Ms. Terry, can you start with the solicitor's presentation for me, please?
Yes,
And this is going to be
ma'am.
unfortunate because I'm going to have to just say next.
Okay, 1 second. It's pulling up right now.
I just realized something too. Y'all pardon this technical difficulty. Your microphone was working, Erica, and I think you, oh,
She
maybe
could
you
hear
only heard
us.
me from the phone. So you heard me from the phone?
No, I couldn't hear, but I couldn't hear you all.
Okay, so do this, and so sorry for this, but do this, because the sound is not so great on your phone. Mute the, actually, I can mute the phone for you, but unmute your computer. Oh, maybe I can't mute the phone.
Wait,
Okay, what about
Okay,
that?
what about that?
Yeah, but we just need to mute the phone, and okay, there we go. All right, perfect, Erica, that's perfect.
Okay, what about now?
Perfect, perfect, perfect. Can you hear us?
Oh, yes, I can hear you.
Perfect, let's go, perfect.
Okay, okay, got it worked out.
Oh, so you're gonna have to,
Okay, what about now?
yeah, that's good. There was an echo a second ago, but I don't hear it
Okay.
now, so we're good, we're good.
Okay, I'm Erica D. Smith, and I'm Deputy Solicitor in the Office of the City Solicitor. And the City Solicitor, what we do is we prosecute the cases that are brought before municipal court. We are the prosecution arm for the City of Atlanta. Unlike the City Attorney's Office, we deal with the criminal aspect and with code enforcement. And next slide, please. Again, the mission of our office is to represent the citizens of the City of Atlanta. We step in and we actually are Atlanta, the constituents. When people call in and make complaints, we represent you. Our office commits our resources in partnership with law enforcement and the citizens in the greater community. We're just an extension of law enforcement. So if you have public works, if you have APD code enforcement, if you have revenue, whoever is the enforcement arm for the City of Atlanta, we prosecute their cases when they come in the City of Atlanta Municipal Court. Next screen, please. Our core function are to prosecute traffic, criminal, and code enforcement cases. Our traffic cases, you all know what those are. People travel the byways and highways of the City of Atlanta where you're on 75, 85, or some parts of 285 actually lie within the City of Atlanta, so as well as 20. So if you're on a city street or on those particular highways and byways that encompass the City of Atlanta, those traffic cases come within the City of Atlanta. We also prosecute criminal cases, which are chef by shoplifting. We also prosecute minor drug offenses, such as possession of marijuana, as well as underage drinking. We also have our city ordinances that we enforce that are quasi-criminal in nature, and of course, our code enforcement cases. And every city department has an enforcement arm. And like I just said, whether it's APD, and mostly that's what you will see in this presentation and before the Code Enforcement Academy, is what APD code enforcement does, and that is housing and commercial code violations. However, every city department, again, whether it's business license that are enforcing alcohol and business permits, whether it's solid waste and DPW, we're enforcing dumping, overflowing of dumpsters and dumpsters not being enclosed, those type of violations. Even watershed management, they do the environmental cases as well as theft of services when people are stealing services from the city of Atlanta. So that's what our court and that's what our office, the solicitor's office, does. We also have community prosecution, where many of you see our solicitors in your MPU meeting, just being engaged in the community and keeping track of complaints that are coming from the code enforcement side, as well as engaging with the community, whether it's in cleanups or hosting our Fight Against Blight symposiums and any other symposiums that we have out there that encompass our college students. And I will get into that more in this presentation. Our office also has many diversion and deferred prosecution programs, such as pretrial intervention traffic, where if you have a light traffic record, your case in order, instead of being prosecuted, we can send it through a diversion program, where at the end of your participation in that program, your underlying case is dismissed and we don't move forward with prosecution. For the most part, the majority of the things that we do within our office, again, is code enforcement. And some of these, what I'm getting ready to go through with you, you may have seen with APD code enforcement, but I'm going to go over the most cases that we see, which are some of our habitual offenders. But our code enforcement division of the solicitor's office prosecutes the housing, zoning, buildings, public works, water theft, and fire code violations. And this is typically what we see: a house that has been vacant and boarded up, or a house that's vacant and unsecured. So what is APD code enforcement section? This particular section brings forth to our office external violations, okay? So these are violations that are that you can see from a curbage. So if you're standing outside of a particular property, this is what APD code enforcement brings. So they bring cases that are residential, commercial, and industrial, and with multifamily. Those are apartments and townhomes and things of that nature. But generally, they conduct external inspections. So things such as leaking ceilings, mold, those type of cases does not really encompass what APD code enforcement do. They basically bring forth to our office external investigation and external inspections. The code enforcement process. Generally, what happens is, and I kind of give an analogy of a relay race. If you're familiar with track, it's 4 legs that's ran. The first leg is the complaint, is complaint driven, is usually by a constituent, or it may be another charging agency that calls 311, or a council member, or anybody, but it usually is complaint driven through a complaint that's made to our office, directly to code enforcement or any other charging agency, or through the 311 means. So that's the first leg. The second leg, the complaint is sent to the actual enforcement department for inspection and investigation. So say, for instance, if it's something that's dealing with a vacant property and the complaint is that it's overgrowth and that the rodents or anything from that, or snakes or something of that nature, are emanating from that particular address where there's overgrowth coming onto somebody else's property, they call in 311 and they have a complaint. So that complaint will go to APD code enforcement, because again, that will be an external investigation or something that's happening on the outside of the property. Code enforcement will go out, do an investigation, and if a violation is found, they will write a citation. Third leg, that citation is booked into the court and a court case is initiated. That case comes to the solicitor's office, and that's where my office gets involved within the third leg. So when the defendant comes into court, they can do one of three things. They can enter a plea of guilty, no contest, or not guilty. A guilty plea is an admission of guilt that this particular complaint and citation it actually existed, and they will enter a plea of guilty. And normally what happens is the judge will accept the plea, a fine is assessed, and that person has to come into compliance, i.e. cut the grass. They can also enter a plea of no contest. A no contest or a NOLO plea is not a plea of guilty, you're just not contesting the charges. Again, you have to bring the property into compliance and a fine assessed. A not guilty plea, we set the case for trial. The officer comes in who did the initial investigation, and or if it was a neighbor and that person wants to come in and testify through the investigation, we find out other people that may be involved in the case, and they too can come into court to either testify or enter a victim impact statement of how that particular violation has impacted them. The fourth leg, if there is a trial, this is where the judge comes in. The judge can either accept the guilty, no contest plea, or the judge is the trial fact at the trial and makes a determination of the guilt and or innocence. Either they sustain the charge or they will dismiss the charge. So this is the code enforcement process. A complaint, investigation, citation filed, it comes into court. Either they enter a plea, we have a trial, the judge makes a determination if he's going to accept the plea or makes the determination of sustaining the charge or dismissing the case. The most common code enforcement violations that we see from APD housing are junk, trash, and debris, overgrowth, junk vehicle, vehicle parked on grass, flaking and peeling paint, damaged porch, stairs, damaged fascia, soffit boards, and that deals with your gutters and roof type of issues. Roof damage where there's actually holes or some type of compromise of the roof, damaged windows, damaged exterior walls, missing house numbers. And again, these are violations that you can see from the exterior, from the curb. This is the next screen will show you an example of overgrowth. Overgrowth is anything that is 12 inches or more. And as you can see, this is way more than 12 inches, but this is massive overgrowth that you mostly see at abandoned or vacant homes, but we also see it in properties that are occupied. Again, overgrowth is grass and weeds that are extending 12 inches. It creates a haven for snakes, rodents, roaches, and other pests. Junk, trash, and debris. This is a photograph of what we see that is classic junk, trash, and debris. An occupant, tenant, owner may not allow junk, trash, and debris to accumulate on your property. We normally see household garbage, yard trimmings, bulk pickup, and recycling are collected on a weekly scheduled day, but you cannot put it out before that particular scheduled day. That's considered junk, trash, and debris. You need to call 311 to find out when is your neighborhood schedule. A junk vehicle is a vehicle that has a missing tag or that is inoperable. As you can see, this particular vehicle does not have a license plate and it has a flat tire. So this is a definition of a junk vehicle. Again, a junk vehicle, if it's out in your driveway, you can have a vehicle that's inoperable, but it has to be in an enclosed structure. That means your garage. And but if it's been dismantled, discarded, scrapped, wrecked, or is deemed inoperable, it's on flats, that's a junk vehicle. Also, if it cannot be legally operated on the public roads, it doesn't have a current registration, a license plate, or a tag. Now, if your tag is expired, by definition of our code, it is a junk vehicle because technically you cannot put that vehicle on the road because your tag has expired. So you can have a 2022 vehicle, and if you do not have, if your birthday was in January of 2022 and we're now sitting in November, then your vehicle is considered junk because you don't have an up-to-date tag, because now we're in November and you should have a 2023 tag on your vehicle. Vehicle parked on grass. We see this all the time. And this is a classic picture of a vehicle parked on grass. It has to be on a non-weather surface, whether that's cement, gravel, or something of that nature. And you just can't throw down gravel on your driveway. So the vehicle must be parked on all weather surfaces, synthetic surface that is not encumbered by adverse weather conditions. Flaking and peeling paint. This is an extreme example of flaking and peeling paint, but as a rule of thumb, kind of paint your house every 6 to 7 years. But this is an example of flaking and peeling paint. Exterior wood surfaces other than cedar, cypress, or redwood shall be protected from the elements and decay by paint or other protective covering for treatment. Damaged porch and stairs. Your porch and your balusters have to be in good and working and safe conditions. Usually we have porch and stairs decay, mostly at apartment complexes, because that's where we see it the most damages. Inside and outside stairways and porches shall be capable of supporting loads and shall be maintained in sound and workmanlike condition and repair. Damaged fascia and soffit boards. Again, this deals with your roofing, that your gutters have to be in good and working conditions. And what's up under the roof is called your fascia and soffit boards. And this is an example of damaged fascia and soffit boards. Again, your roofs shall be structurally sound and tight. It shall have no defects which emit moisture or cause dampness in the walls or interior portion of the building. This is an example of roof damage. Normally, again, and I'm going to stress this, code enforcement deals with exterior violations. And the biggest red flag that code enforcement sees all the time are tarps on roofs. When you see that blue, green, and sometimes red tarp over the roof, that means that the roof has been compromised and something is going to emit moisture into that roof. But this is an example of a damaged roof. Not only is the roof damaged, but as you can see, the gutters are not in working order and the soffit boards have damage. With roof damage, it shall be structurally sound and tight. As I said before, nothing should be present that's going to emit moisture and shall be maintained in sound condition and workmanlike maintenance and repair. Broken windows, that usually speaks for itself. All your windows have to be in substantially tight within its frame. And again, you can't have anything with cracks or hole, and it has to be sealed and with suitable sealers. Structural damage. We see this a lot when you have unfinished sidings on particular buildings. This particular house not only has structural damage, but it has flaking and peeling paint. It's something wrong with the porch. This house has a lot going on. It has roof damage, soffit board damage, but any type of structural damage, you can be cited for roof repair, structural damage, and all, okay? Missing exterior walls, all of that you can be cited for. And again, the exterior walls shall be free of holes, breaks, splits, or loose, decayed boards, and it has to be maintained in a sound condition and workmanlike maintenance and repair. We also get this a lot. Is your numbers up? A missing house number. This is very important, but many of our constituents take this lightly. But if your number is not up, this can prolong an ambulance or fire, or any rescue workers or the police from getting to your home if we can't see your number. So our code says that you have to have your number up. Now, do you have to have it painted on your curb? No, but you have to have it up and visible on your home. What is compliance? I mentioned that when the cases come to the City of Atlanta Municipal Court and through our office, one of the requirements before we close out the case is compliance. But what is compliance? Compliance is fixing the violation in which you were cited. If you're cited for overgrowth, you have to cut the grass. If you're cited for a roof violation, you have to fix the roof. The property, or you have to dispose of the property through sale or donation, meaning you're no longer the occupant, you're no longer the owner, you're no longer the tenant at that particular property, or you break your lease and you leave. Or the last thing, if it's beyond repair, if it's over 51% deteriorated, then the city will require you to demolish that property. And that does require a demolition permit from the Office of Buildings. And we do have buildings that are in such disrepair, then and if it's over 51% deteriorated, that we will require demolition of that particular property. So again, compliance, fix it, sell it, donate it, or demolish it. The court penalties for any code enforcement violation by code under section 1-8, you can be fined up to $1,000. Certain code enforcement violations, there is a minimum and maximum on violations such as high grass and junk trash and debris. The minimum fine amount is $250, but you can be fined up to $1,000. And after 3 housing code violations at a single property or with a particular single owner, the judge may sentence that individual up to 100 days in our city jail. So housing violations, again, they are quasi-criminal. You can either be fined, sentenced to community service, or face the possibility of incarceration. Reason for resets. We get this a lot, and this is a question that we get a lot through our MPUs. And many of the reasons are as follows. These, again, are quasi-criminal, and anytime that you are being faced with any type of incarceration, you have a right to an attorney. And our public defenders will come on next with their presentation, because not only are we a city that bring the violations through the solicitor's office, and we're the prosecution arm, but we do provide attorneys that can represent you and navigate you through our legal system. And those are the public defenders who will speak momentarily. Your case is also reset for a trial. Again, on your initial court appearance, that is what we call an arraignment, when you're told of the violations and charges that are being brought against you. So if you ask for a trial, we will reset your case for a trial to get the officer and or any other individual that can be helpful to the solicitor's case to get them into the court to testify against you. We also reset for compliance. As I said before, one of the compliance measures may be to demo the building. So that requires to get a permit. A permit isn't an overnight type of process, so that can require some time. So we will give the individual or the company time to come into compliance. And sometimes there's also property that is pending in a higher court, such as inheritance property. In a higher court would be probate court, superior court, state court, any court that's higher than municipal court. We have to wait on a succession in probate court before we know who the true heirs of a property may be. So, and there could be ownership disputes. We reset for permits, unavailability of an officer, or officer when we set it for trial may be out on vacation, may be sick. So we have to reset it again. And lastly, for inclement weather, on that particular day, we may have a snow day, or that we've had in the past, which is an anomaly, but hey, it may be COVID or something that's going around, that there is a closure within the court, that we cannot be within close proximity of each other. So that's the last thing of why cases may be reset, because of weather or a national pandemic. So, but at the end of the day, compliance is the goal. If we have to set it in order for the property owner, occupant, tenant to come into compliance, we will do so. One of the things about our office is we engage within the community. We have community outreach. We go to our MPUs. We have relationships with all of our 6 police zones. So we are very active within our community. And so this gives our office a direct link to our communities. We have food drives with our council members, with various organizations. We have our community prosecutors. Again, we engage within our community cleanups. So we are out there, as was said before at the beginning of this presentation. So you see us all the time. We are out, and we are not just prosecutors, but we are public servants out there to educate our citizens about code enforcement, the court process, as well as responsibility of home ownership. We also have our college tour and SOAR. We go to our colleges and our university to teach them about education and our court system, as well as with our elementary, middle school, and high school students. One of the biggest things with our college tour is that in the state of Georgia, unlike many other states, traffic offenses, and again, that's our big thing that we do in municipal court, is prosecute traffic offenses. But traffic offenses in the state of Georgia are criminal in nature. They are our state codes, or what we call the rules of the road. So if you have a ticket with a traffic violation, if you do not come to court, a warrant will be put out for your arrest. We call it a failure to appear warrant. In many jurisdictions, traffic offenses are civil, but here in Georgia, they are criminal. And we also tell our college students about the danger of drinking and driving, as well as anything that may make your driving less safe, whether that's drugs and or alcohol related activities. We have we also partner with our elementary, junior high, as well as high school students to tell them about peer court, where they actually come in, they view court sessions. We have our public safety field day, where we educate our students on safety issue and nurture relationships between our young children and our public safety forces. The police come out with mounted patrol. They've also have come out with their helicopter units, with SOS, that's the motorcycles, to engage our young kids, and then let them know that our officers are here to make them safe and make them be in a healthy environment. Our office several years ago started the Fight Against Blight symposium, where we would come out to various locations within the city of Atlanta and tell our citizens about code enforcement, as well as our code enforcement agencies. And one of the things that was a part of the Fight Against Blight educational symposium was actually this particular class, which was the Code Enforcement Academy. It was a part of Fight Against Blight with Councilmember Shepherd. But Fight Against Blight was quite popular. And now that we're, coming back into in-person type of meetings, we hope to start Fight Against Blight in the upcoming 2023 year. But Fight Against Blight, we now have Fight Against Blight in action, where we partner with our various communities for community cleanups. So we have Fight Against Blight that's coming back to you soon in 2023, but right now we're concentrating on Fight Against Blight in action, actually being active and cleaning our communities. Our scrap tire training, we train Public Works on scrap tires and where to identify scrap tires and where people routinely dump. And we have partnered with the law department, as well as our various agency, to legislate our scrap tire ordinance. And these are actually pictures that we're taking with a dump site that was in zone 4. And this is how serious it can be when retailers do not take their tires to one of the areas that actually deal with scrap tires. So this is very prevalent within the city of Atlanta, where people dump tires instead of taking them where they can be recycled. In the city of Atlanta, we have diversion and alternative programs. And one of our biggest programs is what we call pretrial intervention traffic. And this is a video, if you actually press that. Yeah, thank you, press that. Actually, there's supposed to be some video playing.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if there's a sound, Samantha, you have to select the
Go to the sound.
your audio.
Okay, well, for time, pretrial intervention is
On my end.
call it PTIT, but it's pretrial intervention traffic. Again, if you have a traffic offense, and traffic offenses are criminal misdemeanor cases. So if you are eligible for the program, meaning that if your traffic record is light, you will get a bite at the apple. Instead of prosecuting the case, you can go through our diversion program. The diversion program, it's if it's a speed type of case where it's speeding, you may be required to go to traffic school, but it depends on what the eligibility requirements are. But instead of being prosecuted and having this ticket on your driving record, which may impact your insurance and other things, especially if you're under the age of 21, it could be impactful to your record. It could result in suspension of licenses. But again, we have a program that we, instead of prosecuting your case, we send it through a diversion, and your underlying case is dismissed as if it did not occur if you're eligible for this program.
Got a traffic
Can y'all
ticket?
hear it now?
Well, you are in luck. The Pretrial Intervention Program for Traffic, also known as PTIT, is here to help. What is PTIT, you ask? It's a diversionary program where your case will be dismissed with no points and no conviction. What does the PTIT program entail? There's a participation fee, as well as a commitment to being a
Okay, we're just gonna go to the next.
safer.
Okay, for time, we're going to go ahead and just move on. And if we can to the next screen, please. Our office is devoted to the city of Atlanta, and so many of our solicitors serve on various committee, boards, and task force. We are involved with the Municipal Court of Atlanta Improvement Task Force, the Code Enforcement Commission, our Mental Health Task Force, our Nuisance Property Initiative, which is 3 actual properties that we deal with. I don't know if you all are familiar with the Mayor's Nightlife Initiative, but that's aimed at clubs that have a significant level of violent crime that are occurring at them, clubs that are in violation of their liquor license. We also deal with nuisance properties throughout the city of Atlanta that have been habitual offenders within the city of Atlanta Municipal Court, as well as with our multi-properties where we have a lot of gang activity. We partner with the Fulton County DA's office to basically find out where our crime is happening, where the gangs are, the drugs, as well as guns and gun activity. We're also active with the Westside Future Fund Committee, the Scrap Tire Task Force, as I told you about, vertical prosecution, where we in the solicitor's office within state court for Fulton County, we work with them with virtual prosecution, that basically anything that came out of municipal court, we follow it to state court if people want a jury trial, because we do not have jury trials in municipal court, but our prosecutors will follow that case if it's bound over the state court of Fulton County for vertical prosecution. We also have solicitors that sit on the board for the Atlanta Victim Assistance Incorporation Agency with Fulton County Pre-Arrest Diversion, which everybody knows as PAD, as well as with our Ethics Department and the State Bar of Georgia and our Prosecuting Attorneys Council of Georgia. In summary, we are expanding the services for the City of Atlanta Solicitor's Office to not only community prosecution, our diversion programs, community outreach. We train law enforcement, and we collaborate with other city departments for a multi-departmental details where we go to our apartment complexes, we deal with our nuisance properties, but at the end, our goal is to successfully resolve cases in the Atlanta Municipal Court for our public good. We do have Facebook, we do have Twitter, and you can always reach our office at 404-658-6618 if you want to know the status of our cases. And the solicitor himself is Rains F. Carter, and our office manager is Ms. Milan Henderson. And at this time, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
I have a question. So about cars that are parked on the street, what about a vehicle that looks borderline abandoned in the sense that it has a current tag and current insurance, but it's dirty and it has flat tires?
Okay, that would, if it's parked on the city street, that is a policing matter. And the police themselves, if that vehicle is inoperable, they have a tag that they can put on the car. If they don't move it, then the police department can tow it, especially if it's on a city street, because it's obstructing other vehicles that may be coming through that street. So if that vehicle is inoperable, but it does have a good tag, it still is considered a junk vehicle. And if it's on the city street, that is not a code enforcement matter. That is a policing matter that you need to call your police zone.
But it's parked on the side of the street. It's not obstructing the flow of traffic.
But if it's on a city street and not on a driveway, okay, or in someone's driveway, if it's on a city street, even if it's on the corner or it's not obstructing, if it is an inoperable vehicle, it can be tagged by APD, the police department, and either if that person does not remove it, it can be towed.
Okay, thank you.
Also, everyone, please make sure you raise your hand so that we can go in the queue and get you in order. Jacob Mills, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Smith. I really enjoyed this presentation. My question is, in our neighborhood, we have a lot of legacy residents, not a lot of abandoned, so much so anymore. But if a code violation for a legacy resident who is not able to pay to get this fixed, is there a program or something that is set up to help assist, or is there a way that the neighborhood could become aware of the violation and possibly help them, rectify whatever issue is on the property?
To answer your question, in the years prior to the pandemic, we had a diversion program called DEV for disabled, elderly, and veterans. We haven't ran that program because of the pandemic, because they have to come in, they have to take a course and have a fire inspection, which is an interior inspection. But we had resources available, and right now we've kind of suspended that program because of the pandemic, because many of the agencies that we partner with are not available. Corrections used to go out and help with grass cutting. We did partner with House Proud as well as Habitat to help with painting and things of that nature. Again, we're hopeful as we come into our new year of 2023, we can get that program back and running. But my email address is edsmith. It looks like Ed Smith, EDSMITH at atlantanga.gov. Is there anything in particular that's within your neighborhood? We try to do triage things one-on-one, because we do know that we do have elderly people in our neighborhoods, and we want disabled as well as veterans, and we want to sustain our neighborhoods and get resources to people if we have those resources available and connect them. And even though we're not running the program, I do have a list of people that can come out and offer some resources to those people who either have an inability to bring the property in compliance or just needs a little help because of disability.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Ms. Ola, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Good morning, Miss Erica.
Good morning, Miss Ola. How are you?
I'm good. How are you this morning?
Excellent.
Great.
This Reynolds goes way back.
That's what I was about to say. We go way back, and it's still one of those homes that you showed earlier with the overgrowth and the house is plaqued. And you may have dealt with this some time back. 1095 Northwest Drive. The house still looks the same.
We need to have an offline conversation because I don't want to get into our ongoing.
Okay. Thank you.
Talk to you. Your name came up yesterday about some situations that we have in MPUG. So I will give you an offline call, okay?
Please do. You have my correct number. Okay, very good. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And Ms. Reynolds, thank you for everything that you do. You are truly active in your community, and we appreciate you.
Thank you. I enjoy what I do. Thank you.
Mrs. Fuller, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, thanks. Great presentation. My question is, can the house number be on the mailbox and not the house?
Actually, it's required to be curbside, on the house itself, and on the mailbox. If you have it on the mailbox, you're meeting, that's not technically meeting the requirement. It has to be, your house number has to be on the house, situated on the house itself.
Thank you.
Regina Maya?
Hi there. I have a couple questions. So one was, you had a very good slide that showed it was like a flow chart in a circle, and it said, okay, initiation a call at 311, and then it kind of went to the next phase and the next phase. Can you give us some context around maybe some approximate timings of each of those phases? Like, this is maybe a 30-day expectation in this part, and then I don't know if that's possible to maybe give some timeframes. And then the other, oh, go ahead.
No, finish your question, ma'am. Just
And then the other question was, you made some it was so much valuable information. I tried to catch everything. There's one where you said if you had 3 code violations within a certain number of days, then I think is that correct, that you have to make a court appearance, or what it had to do with the housing violation?
no, that if you have 3 violations, then you may be subject to jail. Like, say, for instance, if you're at 150 Garnett Street, and that's where the court is located, but on 3 separate occasions, you've had 3 cases in our court. So you may have had a case that your property was open and vacant. You may have had a case for overgrowth. You may have a case that it was a junk vehicle. But if we have 3 cases against you, you could be subject, not shall, but could be subject to incarceration. Back to your original question, within that relay race, usually if the call is made to 311, is sent to the correct the department that has the purview over that particular violation within 24 to 48 hours. That's what 311 is for. That's like calling 911, okay? It needs to be routed to that particular department. Now, I don't know the SOP of the various department, but I do know with APD code enforcement, they get on those immediately where it goes in that particular officer queue. Every officer within code enforcement has a particular quadrant within the city of Atlanta that they work in. So if it comes to 150 Garnett Street, that's going to go to zone 5 and to that southwest quadrant to that particular officer within 48 hours. They go out, do an inspection. If a violation is filed, they can write a ticket anywhere out to, and it depends on the violation itself. If it's something that's highly hazardous and dealing with safety, that ticket has to be booked in the court no less than 30 days. If it's something that's not so much a public safety type of situation, such as a junk vehicle that's parked in someone's driveway, it's not an emergency such as an open and vacant structure, which is considered highly hazardous, or overgrowth in the summertime, or that may have snakes and things of that nature. Those tickets can be booked up to 60 days. So anywhere from 30 or less, or up to 60 days. And then with the court date, the people come in, and again, it could be reset for whatever reason. But usually from the time that case is initiated to the court date, we see it anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks in court. Because most of our violations are highly hazardous.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you so much.
Mrs. Jackson, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you. Good morning. This is excellent information. Thank you for being here. And before I forget, Mr. Mills, it's great of you to look after your legacy residents, the elderly in your neighborhood. And are you familiar with the programs through Fulton County Senior Services? They have quite a few programs available to help seniors with home repairs and everything. Ms. Smith, I have 2 quick questions for you. Midway through your presentation, you mentioned a particular city code and section where these ordinance violations could be checked. Do you remember what that code was, the section?
Referring to our penalties provision, which is 1-8, where it's the penalties, but all housing code can be found in the City of Atlanta Code of Ordinances under the housing code. They're going to be within that particular code section, and you can find them within the housing and residential code. They're going to be in chapter 19 and 25, as well as in 1-2095. So if you go to section 8-20 85 and 95, I believe. I don't have it right in front of me, but that's
Mhm.
commercial code. Okay,
Okay, all right, that's a Muni code.
that's the Muni code.
Okay, and my second question had to do with the gravel driveways. Is that a no-no in Atlanta? No gravel driveways?
You can have a gravel driveway. However, again, you would have to go through zoning and buildings, just like when you pull any kind of permit to have that. You just can't put gravel down and say, oh, this is where I want these people. This is where it's going to be a non-weather surface parking. No, you can't do that. You have to actually pull a permit as if you were laying down cement or any type of pavement.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Jamie Turner, you can unmute yourself.
Hey, good morning. Thank you for the great information, Erica. Quick question. I know you stated that if the property is over 51% dilapidated, that you can issue you can issue something for the property to be demolished. What if there is a mortgage on the property? Do you give any merit to that, or that doesn't have anything to do with the city?
Sir, the onus is on the property owner themselves. Now, you can renovate if it's over. We don't make that determination. That determination, we meaning the solicitor's office, we don't make that determination. Now, in order to come into compliance, and let me clarify something. The onus is on the property owner to bring it into compliance. So either you can fix it. If your property is over 51% deteriorated, you don't necessarily have to take it down. You can pull permits to renovate as long as you're working within the original footage of the home. So you have an option to fix it, you have an option to sell it, or you have an option to demo it. So the option is on that property owner, and then they go through the proper channels of pulling a demo permit, pulling the permits to renovate. But even if it's over 51%, you don't necessarily have to tear your property down, sir.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Leah LaRue, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you. Good morning, Erica.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. Hope you are too. Thanks for being here. Of course, this is always my favorite part of the Code Enforcement Academy. So one thing that I don't think you mentioned that I think is valuable, and maybe you did mention it because I'm over here multitasking, but you all coordinate with other departments or other code enforcement to do these, I forget what you called it, Erica, but to jog your memory, we have had the same issue for years over on Joe Louis. Remember the one with the guy that runs the trucking business from his house and has all those trucks on the street, on a very residential street, and you brought out all the different like APD code, zoning code, and your office and everybody came out together. Can you talk a little bit about how y'all do that, how y'all coordinate together?
Well, that's what we call our collaborative details. And many times we get various complaints about the same property, whether that complaint is coming from a council member's office, constituents, or it may be derived from APD themselves. And it's not something, and please note, APD code enforcement is a division of the police department, but they're not your boots on the street. So they're different. These are civilians that have the ability to issue violations with the housing and commercial code. So they're not post-certified officers. So you may get a post-certified officer that calls code enforcement. So if we're getting these same complaints about a various location, we get all of our departments together and we call it a collaborative detail, where we go out and everybody, whatever you see that's under, that's within your lane or under your wheelhouse, cite them for it. So we not just have that one violation, we have multiple violations that will come into court. So it's called a collaborative detail. That's what we do.
Thank you. I love that concept. Of course, I'm a big fan of all of the city departments working together where we can. Otherwise, you get bounced around from place to place. Like you'll call this person and be like, oh, that's not me, that's so-and-so, or that's not me, that's so-and-so. But that operation that y'all run, that collaborative detail, is so helpful because instead of transferring, and in this case, it was literally me making the call, instead of transferring me to somebody else, it's you saying, I'll coordinate with the other departments and we'll all go out there and, you know, look at the properties and determine what falls in which wheelhouse, and we'll all take on our own roles for resolving this. So that's very helpful. And I thought everybody should know that y'all do that. Thank you. And by the way, those trucks are still out there. Still.
Well, it comes in compliance, and then, you know, that's one of the places that we just have to monitor. And there's many places within the city of Atlanta that is the same thing, where they come into compliance and then they say, hey, nobody's looking, let me go back to my regular activity and go back to doing what I was doing. So we have to, with habitual offenders, we do have to monitor them.
Yeah, that kind of leads to, I'm going to relinquish the mic, but that does lead to a conversation around, I guess, around consequences, because additionally, and that one, by the way, is not my neighborhood. It is my NPU, but it's not my neighborhood. But there's also another one on West Lake that I've reported 30 times that have come to me from the community, because they know, they know where I work, they know what I do, so they call me for help. We have a rooming house that, I mean, years, like long before I even got here, they've been parking 6, 7, 8, 10 cars on the lawn. And it's an illegal rooming house, and the city has gone out countless times. At one point, I forgot the former code enforcement commander, I forgot his name, but he went out himself. He personally, was it?
Major Mason.
Major Mason, yeah. He went out and he rang the doorbell himself. And then he called me afterward and was like, this is what I did. And it worked for maybe a week or two, but then you started seeing those cars right back on the lawn. So you're right. They do, after the city does its part, they kind of lay low. They see that no one's doing anything, no one's paying attention anymore, or they think no one's paying attention anymore. So they go right back to what they're doing. I would love for us to figure out a way to combat that if it's possible.
Well, you and I, for time, you and I need to have a conversation, because I know exactly what you're talking about.
Oh, good. Yeah, let's talk. I'll call you. Thank you.
Mr. Mills, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
All right, last question, I promise. So this goes with the grass violation. I'm a beekeeper, and we have a couple other beekeepers in the neighborhood, and I've got a big garden in my yard, but we have started encouraging people to do pollinator zones in their front yards. And we also work very heavily with Trees Atlanta. We were actually the neighborhood of the year this year for Trees Atlanta, with planting of fruit trees and things like that around in our neighborhood. So I was wondering, do these pollinator zones fall into your 12-inch category, because they are wildflowers and they're planted for butterflies, hummingbirds, and obviously for bees?
Well, sir, you're gonna have to excuse me, but you're gonna have to. I'm into optics. I'm gonna have to see it. And if being, with all due respect, what without giving me your address or anything, what area do you live in? What's your NPU?
I'm in NPUY. I am at Chosewood Park, and I am the chairman for Chosewood Park.
Okay. Well, I might have to come out and check it out and put a visual on it, because without seeing it, I can't give you a definitive answer, because some things that have gotten out of control now was originally put in place as a deterrent, like our English ivy, which is now out of control. But that was once a deterrent for certain things. So I have to put eyes on it to be really answer your question, sir.
I'll be glad to have you come out. We can give you some fresh honey and fresh vegetables. We do about 3,000 pounds of vegetables a year, and we share with a lot of the community. And we just recently started, taking it to the Grant Park market up there off of Memorial. So I'll send you an email.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Fuller, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, thanks. The hardest thing dealing with communities are those complaints that never get addressed. I know it's everybody's headache, but Jesus, if we could do something about it. People just lose faith. My question, can you address violations against historic preservation issues when people are trying to renovate or whatever else?
You wouldn't happen to live in Collier Heights, would you?
No, historic West End.
Okay, between Collier Heights and West End, that's where we get our many violations, because they are designated historic districts, and it's really gotten out of control in Collier Heights. But to answer your question, and that's where a lot of cases get reset, because you have to go through the UDC in order to get certain permits and things of that nature. But within a historic district, you definitely there's certain conditions of, you have to keep certain paints, the windows, all of the original structures within a particular house. That's a really in-depth conversation, because we have so many violators that are innocent, that when they get certain homes, is already there's already a violation existing when they actually close and acquire the property. So that's not a quickie that I can answer right now, but I mean, West End is not as much as Collier Heights, but within that particular area of Collier Heights, we have a lot of violations where people have compromised the integrity of the historical aspect of those homes. Do you have my information, ma'am?
You're talking to me?
Yes, ma'am, because I'm
Oh.
your question.
No, I really deal primarily with the business community, but we are thinking about historic designation for the business corridor, especially with the new mall coming in. We know we have to do something about all of the businesses around the mall. So,
Because one of the things, and I'm just going to say this and we can move on. One of the things that I see that's a problem, and this is a city problem that we need to work out, when people pull permits in any historic district, instead of having different things in little bitty writing, we need to make sure that we flag those permits and say, hey, you know, you just pulled a permit in a historic district and you need to do X, Y, Z, and that we're more hands-on when people are pulling permits for renovation or doing any type of alterations in our historic district areas. And again, that's a planning and UDC and buildings issue that we do have a new commissioner within that department, and that's conversation and dialogue we've been having with her.
thank you.
Yeah. Do we have any more questions? Awesome. Well, we are about to go into our first break at 10:10. I anticipate seeing you all back at 10:20. And then we will go into our next portion of the court system. So everyone keep your sound on so you can hear us muffling and coming back in 10 minutes or so. See you all in 10 minutes. Thanks so much, Erica.
Thank you, Erica. That was awesome. Thank you so much.
everyone. It's 10:20 and we're going to go ahead and go over to our next part of our presentation. Or class, I'm sorry. It's been a long morning. And I apologize. This morning I was saying Brian, I was reading Brittany, but I was actually talking about Henry. It's just been one of those days. So we're going to transition over to the Office of Public Defender. Henry, are you on?
He is.
Okay. So we have Miss Brittany Martin and Henry Adelaide, who will be who will be presenting on behalf of the Office of the Public Defender this morning.
Mr. Days is here also.
He is. Yeah.
Oh, he is here. Okay.
Yeah. In fact, you provided a wonderful introduction to them, but I also wanted to really just say good morning to everybody and introduce myself and the office. I'm Ken Days. I'm the Chief Public Defender and the Director of the Office of the Public Defender for the City of Atlanta. I really am encouraged by the Code Enforcement Academy every year, because what I recognize is that you all as participants in this tend to be those citizens who are most active. So when we find ourselves out in the community, which is about 40% of our work, it usually ends up being members of the Code Enforcement Academy that we are talking to. And just by way of explanation for us, the City of Atlanta Public Defender's Office primarily supports the municipal court. But as a practice group, we are a group of attorneys, social workers, investigators, and client advocates who all practice what's known as a holistic defense model. And what that really means is, as lawyers, our primary focus is to, of course, go and defend the cases in the municipal court. But because of our holistic advocacy, what we also do is try to be very proactive with our client base. And I take the part of being public defender very serious. And what that means is, to me, if you're a citizen of Atlanta and you need help and we have the resources to provide it, I'm going to make sure that we put whatever resources we can behind someone to help. And so that means we spend a lot of time working with both clients and citizens alike on substance dependency issues, employment. We have a whole unit dedicated to employment referrals, and we have a lot of partners, employer partners who we work with. We have a division of our client advocacy that specifically relates to housing. So anyone that is unhoused or experiencing homelessness, we have a unit that works with them directly to make sure that we can do either temporary housing or supportive housing or even permanent housing. We've got a ton of success stories every month for all three of those, and our reach extends far beyond that. As it pertains to code enforcement, what we typically find our office is, obviously, as a public defender office, when we're appointed a case, our cases are appointed on the basis of indigency. So if a person meets the income criteria, that means they're going to end up as our client if they have an alleged offense that is pending in the municipal court. Most of our clients are residential in nature when it comes to code enforcement. We have had instances where the court has felt it necessary to appoint us to commercial entities. That is very, very rare, but it has happened in the past where we have represented some commercial entities. So typically the problems that we deal with, and which you'll see in our presentation today by our very two capable senior attorneys, are going to focus on the residential aspect, because that's where most of our work encompasses. We'll be available afterward, of course, for questions. And I'm going to put my information in the chat, because this is sort of near and dear to me, because I spent so much time in my previous life before being in the public defender's office. It's primarily a real estate attorney. So this issue around housing and how we sort of protect our legacy residents, I know somebody brought that up. It's very important to me personally, and as a resident of the city of Atlanta and living in a district that is a transitioning neighborhood with a lot of code enforcement issues. Again, it's sort of personal to me. So I'm always, sort of eager to get on my soapbox and talk about this ad nauseum. So I'm going to put my information in the chat. So if anybody has any questions outside of the scope of this that you want to talk about, I'm free to, have those discussions at any time. So, again, think of our office. We're available to you as the public, and we look forward to working with you. And at that, I'm going to turn it over to Brittany and Henry, our senior attorneys who are smarter than me and can explain our position. And so you guys have it.
Henry, cue up.
Yeah, go ahead.
So good morning, everyone. As Mr. Day said, my name is Brittany Martin. I'm one of the public defenders for the city of Atlanta. Henry and I both have the pleasure of serving in housing court. As Mr. Day said, it's also very near and dear to me, just as a citizen of Atlanta, as a daughter of Atlanta, and just as someone who is very proud of the progress our city has made, but also very aware of the cost that some of that progress has had on a certain demographic of citizens that we work with. And so I'm always happy when I get to have these presentations and participate, because we kind of get to provide a different perspective. And so I hope that's what you get today from our presentation. And so Mr. Davis kind of already gave the overview. You can go to the next slide. He kind of already gave the overview for you all, but a lot of what we'll be talking about in our presentation today is just what we do as the public defenders in housing court, how there is the intersection between gentrification and code enforcement, and how code enforcement sometimes impacts gentrification, and what we've seen with our clients, how many of our clients feel as indigent individuals, they are being criminalized by code enforcement sometimes, and why it should matter to us all, as citizens, what the levels are in terms of income that will allow a person to be appointed to the public defender's office. And just to also put in perspective, I believe it was Mr. Mills, Jacob Mills, who brought up the legacy residents and the inability to pay for certain upkeep and costs to repair their homes. And so we'll also put that in perspective as well, in terms of sometimes what our clients face when they're trying to bring properties into compliance. And so lastly, we will close out on just talking about what our office does, outside in the community, some of our initiatives, some of our drives that we have, and just our overall involvement in our approach to representation.
Pardon me, your sound seems to be cutting in and out.
Oh, you said my sound, Mr. Friedman? Can you hear me?
Yes,
I
ma'am.
can hear you just fine. Mr. Lawrence, can you use the chat if you have a comment, please? Thank you.
Can you go to the next one here? So as Mr. Day said, and as I was stating at the previous slide, when we are encountering our clients, many of them want to be heard. A lot of the clients that we see are elderly, they are legacy residents, and sometimes they're quite confused when they get cited because they've never encountered the court system before. So they're just trying to figure out, how do I navigate this and what do I do to bring my property into compliance? So in addition to talking to them, hearing them, we will also connect them with any resources that they need. And that might be organizations that will help them bring their house into compliance, or other connections that we have in our office, such as employment, or any other resources that even family members that they have may need. And also, of course, to defend them. Our job is to represent them. These are criminal cases. So we will work up our cases, we will do the research, we will go out to the properties, we will take pictures, we will see for ourselves, we will compare the allegations with the actual code to see if the alleged violation is actually comporting with how they've been charged. And if need be, we will take the case to trial. And if for whatever reason we are not successful, we will also handle the appeal of the case.
So good morning, everyone. My name's Attorney Adelaide. I'm one of the senior attorneys in the Public Defender's Office as well. And as Brittany was stating, we operate by the code, the city code. Erica did a fantastic job with, our Deputy Smith did a fantastic job with providing the muni code that we use that's near and dear to our heart. And the muni code is consists of a lot of different definitions. Here we have a few definitions that's broken down between owner, occupant, and operator. The code is written with these words interchangeably, and each of these individual words mean a different, has a slightly different meaning. A person that's renting can be considered an operator or occupant under the code. So some codes are written only to apply to operators, some apply to operators and occupants, some apply to occupants and operators and owners. So that's very important in preparing the defense for clients who are appointed to public defenders or district attorneys in general. So as you all know, I'm sure it's no stranger to you living in the city of Atlanta, but gentrification has been a part of what's been taking place in the city of Atlanta. And sometimes, unfortunately, the code enforcement department of any city is used in order to further that agenda. Here you can see in the picture before you, you have a home that's a mansion, you would say. Here you have a legacy residential apartment, it looks like here, where obviously it's a fence around it, and they have overgrowth in front of it as far as the grass. So this can be considered, you know, a violation as well, next to a home that's obviously modernized and probably significantly more, significantly more in value. Again, here you have these individuals move into this nice property and begin to call code enforcement on the legacy residents here for, you know, obviously some initial violations that you can see, which is the grass. And I believe Mr. Mills asked if, you know, the tenant that's living next to this nice gentrified home could be a senior citizen or a veteran who really maybe can't move or doesn't have the tools to be able to run a lawnmower across the grass where you can get the grass into compliance. So we do have processes in place, or I would say connections that we have with other departments in the city and outside the city that can help the individual come into compliance and avoid prosecution from the city or avoid any jail time.
And if I may add to, when we're talking about the intersection between code enforcement and gentrification, as Henry said, you know, one of my first cases when I joined the housing court team was a woman who was a legacy resident. She had inherited her childhood home from her father, and she had been there for generations. And someone bought a property next to her, renovated it, moved in, and immediately began calling code enforcement regarding her roof, her porch, her grass, all of these things. And, you know, in her mind, she's confused because she's been living there for a very long time and no one in her neighborhood has ever called code enforcement on her. In fact, she knew everybody, you know, and everybody was, you know, getting along and living well. And so for her, unfortunately, it came at a time when she was also getting many offers for her property in the mail. I'm sure you all were previously being bombarded with the offers and the calls and everything for you know, your property purchase. And she became so stressed out at the idea that her neighbor was continuously calling code enforcement on her for things she couldn't afford to fix because she was on disability. She ended up selling her property for little to nothing, well below even Zillow's price for it, because she was just that stressed. And, you know, she ended up moving to Rex, Georgia to a mobile home unit. And so when we talk about the intersection between gentrification and code enforcement, that is what we mean. And she's not the only person who has been driven to do that. And so when we are coming and when we are presenting, we're just trying to offer a different perspective. You know, our hope is always that as citizens, like Mr. Mills suggested, we work together and that we try to communicate with each other before code enforcement is brought into the picture, because some people become stressed by that. Henry, I'll let you go.
And so why this should matter to you, as Deputy Smith already mentioned, that anyone who faces a municipal code violation can face up to $1,000 fine and 6 months of jail per individual fine. I'm sorry, per individual ordinance or ordinance that you're cited for. Crimes of our clients are cited with usually is peeling paint, damaged sausage boards, old damaged roofs, roofs that are leaking, overgrowth, which you've seen in the picture before, broken windows, broken doors, damaged walls, and etc. So the type of clients we have a large percentage of minorities, the elderly, veterans, mentally ill. These really include legacy clients or legacy residents as well, majority of the elderly. And most of our clients, obviously, if you qualify for our representation, then obviously you're under the federal property guidelines. So usually our clients earn substantially less than their neighbors or the average community. And some are homeless, and even though they may have this property that may be valued at a lot of money today, they may have bad credit to where they can't tap into the equity in order to use that money to fix up the house. So they may be forced to sell their home because they can't comply with certain provisions of the housing code, i.e., we can't repair the roof, or we can't paint the home because I only make $800 a month. I understand that over a period of time, it has gotten to this place where, it's decayed. However, yes, this elderly person is sitting with a home that's worth maybe $500,000, but only makes $800 a month. So obviously, we know there's going to be some deficit as far as taking care of the monthly bills, let alone trying to fix the property. So let's see. So this is a sample guideline of the federal property. This is a sample of the federal property guidelines that the judges use and the courts use in order to determine who will qualify for a public defender. Here, as you see, is that your family size increase, the amount of money that you make per year does increase too. But for 4 people, $26,000 a year, which is roughly $2,000 a month, and today is reasonable to say that rent is north of $2,000, let alone what a mortgage would be with interest rates at 7% and above for individuals with decent credit. And sorry, let me back up once. So in addition, again, clients that we represent, all of them are indigent. The average, if we represent someone that have issues or been cited for a dilapidated roof or a roof that's not in good repair, the average roof cost, and these numbers are just rough estimates prior to the pandemic, preferably. But a new roof could cost $12,000. And again, individual that can barely pay the monthly, pay for the monthly needs that they have on a monthly basis, just generally can't come up with $12,000 to replace a roof. But again, back to Mr. Mills' concern earlier, there are, programs and different companies that help, veterans. It's it's a lot of resources out there for veterans, but just the elderly in general, there are some resources for them that they can tap into that are connected with other corporations, like I would say Home Depot and Lowe's, that generally fund those nonprofits, so they can provide, resources as far as materials. They may have to still come up with the labor. It's some organizations like House Proud that we partner with, where we'll go and team up with that organization, and we paint the house, cut grass, do things that doesn't require intensive skill level in order to perform, but it does get the person or the individuals that we're helping into compliance. And even before an individual is cited, House Proud works with these individuals to abort for them being cited as a proactive measure.
Yes, and I did see, I did see someone's comment mentioning a lot of these homes being uninsured. That is an issue that we see, because again, a lot of these individuals, they've been in these properties for generations. They don't have the means to acquire new insurance and pay for it. So yeah, a lot of these properties are uninsured. So sometimes there are organizations that won't assist with the repairs because they can't assume the liability. And so that's where, you sometimes as a community, you may have to get creative if you're talking about how you can help your neighbor. And so I just wanted to point that out, that is a thing that we do see. And sometimes we have to kind of get creative or reach out to organizations that don't mind working with those homes that are uninsured. But it is sometimes a barrier.
So again, community, we are involved in the community as well. Our director, Mr. Days, explained briefly that we're a holistic office, and our goal is to eventually prevent individuals from even having to be cited. Like I said, some of these organizations that we work with, like House Proud, enables us to help target, individuals. I mean, we can go through a neighborhood and see individuals who may or may not be in compliance with the code, and connecting and reaching out to them prior to a violation, does give us great autonomy to be able to look at a variety of different resources to be able to help them. A lot of the time when we are connecting individuals with resources, it does take time. But once your case has been commenced in court, you've received a citation, then that kind of speeds things up. Court is the court is involved with the solution, and sometimes the court may or may not be amendable to some of the resources that we've provided to help the client, because they may be bound by the law. So not that they may not want to help, but the court is responsible to operate in certain guidelines that's in compliance with the law as well.
And I think, reiterating, one of the biggest advantages we have to being able to talk to you is that we can, again, bring some awareness to the other side, of the picture, because, no one wants to live beside certain alleged violations of the code, right? But I think, again, there's a way to engage with each other as neighbors to prevent people from going into the criminal court system before they're ever even put on notice or helped. And so I think that's the biggest thing that we hope you all take away, is the need for us to work as a community to prevent individuals from being cited in the first place. And I think, what's also important to point out is there are provisions of the code that require code enforcement to give notice and a time to cure before people are cited. But unfortunately, people are not always given that notice as required by the code. So I think also just educating each other and yourselves on the code so that when you are engaging with each other as neighbors, you're well informed of what the law is and also how you all can work together to help each other. And so our last slide before is just talking a little bit about our other community engagement activities that we do. We have every year we have an annual Thanksgiving food drive where we pass out food, we connect people with resources. Every month we go out and pass out resources to individuals who are experiencing homelessness. We go right into their camps and their communities. And that might be water, that might be socks, that might be warm blankets, depending on what the season is, of course. We've also done GED tutoring, a back to school drive, classes and workshops at the Promise Center, where young people are gathering after school every day. And so we get to engage with them and bring some fun and enjoyment to them on a weekly basis. We also do know your rights trainings so that people can know their rights under the law and how to engage with not only code enforcement, but also the Atlanta Police Department. And we also have a driver's license restoration program, which is very near and dear, especially when individuals' licenses are suspended due to child support issues or other issues that are due to financial barriers. And we assist them with that process of getting their license back. And so, yes, so we are very engaged. I know Mr. Days goes to lots of MPU meetings, so I'm not sure if any of you have ever seen him out, but, we definitely try to be not only engaged in the courtroom with the citizens, but also in the community.
And so this concludes our portion of the presentation. I'm sorry, let me see. We have some resources available for you all to see. So these are some resources if you want to follow up and see how, housing codes and enforcement impacts the criminalization of the poor. So these are some information, it's not a link, but it's some information to where you can find some additional information to become more educated based off some of the collateral consequences of enforcement. And so with that said, we will take questions.
Do we have any questions? Mrs. Rodriguez.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. Thank you so much. This was really excellent. I appreciate how you kind of told the story, of folks kind of dealing with these situations. And I wanted to ask you, I know a lot of cities have kind of shifted their code enforcement approaches from criminal to more civil. Can you talk a little bit about, what that kind of means, particularly for, I guess, the stigma, just in general?
I'll start and then I'll invite Mr. Days or Henry to pick it up. But I think that if we were as a city to move towards the civil side away from the criminal side, I think that it would change the dynamic of how people feel, definitely, when they actually come in to engage with the court system after having been cited, because it is extremely intimidating for people, when they come in and, you have a prosecutor here, you have a public defender here, you have a judge there, and that whether that's going to be the situation in your individual case or not, the potential penalty is jail time. And for many people, again, this is their first encounter with the court, and they're encountering the court due to their property. And so it's very bizarre to a lot of people. And so when we get appointed, especially to elderly clients, because most of our clients are elderly or they're veterans or disabled of some sort, when we encounter them, our first conversation is just really kind of calming them down because they're just so intimidated and so confused. And so my perspective is, if we were to move it to more of a civil offense versus a criminal offense, I think that might allow us to do more engagement up front and to have the process be different for them even when they walk in the door. Mr. Days, do you want to pick it up?
Yeah, let me add to that, because I've had this conversation actually with other public defenders and sort of activist groups around housing nationwide. And it becomes this double-edged sword, because while I think generally nobody wants the threat of jail time for somebody to have overgrowth in grass. I mean, that seems a little ridiculous. But the flip side, and this may sound a little strange coming from me, is that if you do not have that threat of a high fine or jail time, there are people who just would not be compliant. And there are oftentimes, if there's only a civil penalty, there are many bad actors out there who, and this really applies to some of the larger commercial outfits, or some of the large residential investors. A $1,000 fine does not really mean that much to them at all. Because you think about the demolition of a property, if I demolish a house and I don't go through the permitting process, which can be arduous and expensive, it may just be in my best interest to take the risk of getting fined by the court. And what's $1,000 to me? Nothing. So sometimes the threat of jail is very necessary. From a personal perspective, as it relates to the individuals that we represent, I've sort of danced with this on both sides, because if that person is only in a civil process, there's no entitlement to an attorney of any kind. And so now you find yourself in a scenario where you're still facing civil penalties, but there's no one to educate you or explain this process, and there's nobody to defend you, even if you have valid defenses. A lot of people come to these situations with very many valid defenses, but they don't know what they are. And so I prefer the system that we have, because I know if we're on that case, then most instances, and we have a good working relationship with the way the solicitor's office and the courts give us a lot of leeway, I would say, in making this solutions-based. I think we all recognize that the overall goal is compliance. When you looked at that slide that we just had up and saw the individuals on the left side, fixing the fence and painting the house, those were actually attorneys in our office that were doing that. Those are pictures we took of clients' properties where it's like, okay, well, if the violation is getting this porch painted, literally a bunch of us showed up on Saturday and painted the porch. All right, we're in compliance now, and that was the end of that case. The issue was the broken fence. We went and got wood. Somebody in the office knew how to kind of do that because he worked on a farm before. So he got up and we fixed the fence. The property's in compliance, no issue for the resident. So to answer your question, I tend to think of it, I balance it in, I'd rather have a system where there's an attorney available for that individual who may have literacy issues, may have competency issues, and there's a goal of compliance, because I think our court and our solicitor's office do a great job. It's a very, very rare circumstances where actually someone is actually incarcerated on these. Again, there's a lot of patience applied in this, but it may not be across the board, for most other municipalities, but I think generally everybody has the same, goal in mind, which is to get the property in compliance and not necessarily have to, it's sort of the carrot and stick method. You need to have that stick available, but the carrot is just to work together to get the property in compliance.
And I would just echo what Mr. Days and Attorney Martin indicated. Like, I think Mr. Days brought up an integral point, especially, from a criminal to civil. You do have bad actors that are, corporations that the monetary fine that they're going to be assessed is going to be paid by the people that they're violating their rights anyway, or the customers. So it doesn't matter to them. So it's really not a penalty or incentive to actually get into compliance. And then again, one of the biggest reasons why they're not entitled to attorneys, because it's not criminal, they're not facing jail time. But sometimes you can face jail time in civil situations, i.e. with contempt, where you can lose your liberty because you can't pay or be in compliance with what you were ordered to do from a civil perspective. So. You got any other questions?
I don't see any questions, but I think, oh, wait, okay. Mrs. Bird, you can go ahead.
Okay, I have a question that might be too in depth for this conversation, but I'm a graduate of the Fulton County Citizen University, and it was interesting to find out when I went through that training that Fulton County Tax Department really they have no bad debts because they let a third party company come in and pay property taxes for people who cannot pay their property taxes. And after, like, I think it's 3 years, they take over their property if they can't pay them. So what happens to someone who has a $500,000 property and makes $800 a month? How do they pay their property taxes? And if we go in as next door neighbors and help them fix their property up, and then they haven't paid the property taxes, and in 3 years, this third party company comes in and takes over the property, what happens? I mean, how do y'all defend that?
I'll let our deputy answer that question for us.
Well, so first I want to say there is a program, a tax abatement program, where if you meet income requirements and you have you effectively a legacy resident and do not have you meet the income requirements, and your taxes are going to be abated if you're within the city of Atlanta. A lot of people don't know that program exists. I think it's been extended. It's been around for quite some time. One of the things we've often done is we've kind of got a pamphlet that we hand to our clients to let them know that, so that if they have not already taken that in consideration, because that is a big concern. It's often, I actually served as an MPU officer many years ago, and this is one of the things that was talked about quite frequently, is what happens if my property taxes increase. But the fact is that a lot of times folks just don't know that they're entitled to homestead exemption, and after you reach a certain age, the school tax exemption the school tax will be exempted from your portion of property taxes. So it's another way to bring the property taxes down. So there are ways to work with these folks. And again, like I said, if you're in the city of Atlanta, there are tax abatement programs that are available to you for that issue. So that has been talked about, and it's being addressed now. And I believe that program is still in existence as far as I know it. I think originally it was only supposed to last for 2 years, but that was several years ago. And I think it's just been extended indefinitely at this point.
Okay.
Derek, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
All right, yeah, so my question is for Mr. Days. I have a question. In 2011, I was prosecuted by the city of Atlanta, and the public defender's office only offered me a plea deal. So my question is the city public defender still only offering inmates at the city of Atlanta Detention Center plea deals? If
No,
so,
I mean,
how many cases do the public defender's office take to trial?
When you say you were offered only a plea deal, that
appeared to be the only option that you all offered me. It was almost like I was backed in the corner but it was the public defender's office. I didn't have any other options to go to trial or any of those things. You all only offered me a plea deal, and you all cornered me and such. It felt as if that was my only option. So under the advice of the public defender, I took what was given to me and what appears to be the only option on the table. So my second part of the question is, how many cases do the public defender's office take to trial from the Atlanta Detention Center?
Well,
trial is always the option of the client, not ours. We can't tell you to go to trial. We can't tell you to take a plea. So that's why I was saying it's somewhat confusing of the way you're describing it. And I would like to know more about it, because depending on, I want to know, number one, if it's our office, because sometimes if there is a conflict of interest, there are other private attorneys who are appointed to cases that are considered public defenders, but they're not with our office, because what you're describing doesn't meet sort of the processes by which we typically handle a case. And that's why I'd want more information from you as to number one, find out if that's actually our office, because there are other private attorneys. If there is a conflict scenario, or if the court chooses to appoint another attorney on it, they don't have to necessarily appoint to the City of Atlanta's public defender office. They can appoint private counsel who is acting as a public defender, and that person could have represented you. And often it's confusing because somebody says, well, I was represented by a public defender, which technically you were, but what you're describing does not sound like our process. In any kind of code enforcement violation case, it's not a scenario where we're not going to ever encourage anybody to enter a plea at first appearance. It's just that scenario does not even sound like one in which, and again, I've been with the office since 2008, and that has never.
This happened in 2000. This happened in 2011. So I
Yeah,
actually met with you afterwards to discuss the merits of it. But my question was about the statistics.
Hello.
The number of.
All right, hold on. We're not going to do this morning. I'm going to ask Mr. Days if you or
I have
someone.
a very specific question.
I'm going to ask Mr. Days if you or someone from your staff will reach out to Mr. Blassingame, and if you're able to answer the general question that he asked, which was around the numbers of whatever that question was. If you can answer that question, that would be helpful. But anything related to his specific case, I will ask y'all to handle that offline, because that does not pertain to this class at all. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
The number of cases that go to trial, we have that recorded. And it would actually take us having to go into our system to try to parcel out whether or not that case was actually a code enforcement case, the case type. Because again, trials for our attorneys, and I'll just be candid with you, we love trying cases because we're defense attorneys. So for us, we want to fight everything tooth and nail, but that's not always in the best interest of the client. And so again, it's always the client's choice of whether they go to trial or not. But my contact information is in the chat. Please send me an email. My telephone number is there as well. I'm happy to talk to you about that. Again, I don't shy away from any of that discussion. So please feel free to shoot me an email now, and I'll talk to you online today. We can talk as long as you want to about these issues, and happy to discuss it with you.
And can I jump in really quickly, just as like one of the trial attorneys in that courtroom? We definitely have several appeals pending right now. We used to have a trial calendar. Ms. Smith will know the trial calendar for housing court is the first week of every month. And so when I, was in there primarily, I would have anywhere from 10 to 15 trials set in a given week, especially pre-pandemic. So I can't speak for the holistic number, but I can just speak for my experience. As Mr. Days said, we were never ever afraid to take a case to trial, especially given the clients that we represented. We felt like it was very important to take whatever measures we needed to take to see their cases through to whatever end that was for their individual case.
And to piggyback off Brittany, we had a trial Thursday actually that we're still waiting on a verdict for, but we try cases quite often.
Thank you all so much. Ms. Jackson, I believe you have a question.
Yes, very quickly. On a couple of your last slides there, you mentioned outreach and education, and there was one effort that spoke about know your rights at, I think you said it was the Promise House, a program for that, know your rights. Is that
no, so we do know your rights presentations. We primarily use, we will set up shop at any event that the community has. So if you ever having an event and you want us to come and do a know your rights presentation, we will do that. But we used to go to one of the men's transitional houses, and that's where we would primarily have our know your rights presentations. But yes, we do those just on your 4th Amendment rights, 5th Amendment rights, and 6th Amendment rights when you are encountering the police.
My main question was, is that in brochure or PDF form?
It is, however, I think it's being updated right now, but I'm not sure. That would be a question for Mr. Days in terms of dissemination and how that works. But yeah, we do have it.
Okay.
And that's something that we could probably get to you, but I can't affirmatively say that. That's something Mr. Days.
It would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, again, I've got my information in the chat. If you just shoot me an email, and I'll make sure we get what we have currently to you. It's a small brochure, but again, I think it's a little bit outdated, so we do have a team currently working to update that for you. But again, if you want us to come out and present that to any group at any time, we're happy to do so. We can actually give the full presentation. We can even do it online or virtually if need be. We've done that for small groups, particularly young adults, to try to de-escalate some of those police encounters, but we're happy to do that. So just please send me an email and I'll make sure you get the appropriate information and we can set up a time to actually do a program for you.
Thank you, Mr. Days. And when y'all have the updated one, if you could send that to us and we'll make sure that everybody gets it, the updated one.
Yep.
Thank you so much. Ms. Fuller?
I don't know if this falls under your scope of work, but do you have anything in terms of training, seminars around landlord and tenant relations and, kind of falling under the Know Your Rights umbrella?
Yeah, so two things. Actually, the city, we've been sort of lobbying for this for a while because it sort of coincides to a lot of our clients have existing landlord tenant issues. So we've been really lobbying for the city council and administration to give us a little bit more authority and leeway in handling that as a sort of a secondary issue for most of our cases. What has happened is the city has granted us in the last few months authority to assist our clients with landlord tenant issues. However, most of that work is going to go to Atlanta Volunteer Lawyer Foundation. They are sort of the largest local agency that handles landlord tenant issues. And we've got an existing relationship with them. In fact, they just received a big tranche of money from the city to expand their efforts. But certainly if there is an issue, we feel free to give us a call and we can sort it out, because a lot of times a phone call can solve those issues. As far as training is concerned, I know AVLF, the Atlanta Volunteer Lawyers Foundation, offers a public training. I don't know if it's monthly or, if you go to their website, they usually have a section they tell you when their next trainings are. But it's just a sort of a citizen's way to go in and learn a little bit more about, more or less like the Code Enforcement Academy. It's more one day, 2 hour, 3 hour class that they give you sort of the basics of what the rights are for landlords and tenants. Because in Georgia, I think there are about 7 statutes that actually determine the landlord and tenant relationship, and 6 or 7 of those 7 statutes are very pro-landlord, and the tenants almost have little to no rights here. This is why this is a very investor-friendly state and city, because it's very, very much promotes the landlord side and not so much on the tenant side.
Mrs. Fuller, also earlier this year, NPU University offered a course with Atlanta Legal Aid about housing resources for tenants, and we have it available on our YouTube if you want to go look at that as well.
Thank you, I will, and I'll contact Mr. Days as well.
Do we have any more questions? If not, we're actually about to go into our last portion of our class.
Thank you so much, Mr. Days and Mr. Adelaide, Miss Martin. Thank you all for being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having us.
So we are on our final component of the court system today, and it's going to be rounded out with the City of Atlanta's municipal court staff, Brandy Reeves Esquire, Courtney Smith, and Trevian Thompson. If you all are ready to give it a go.
We are ready. Good morning, everybody. Let me share my screen. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
All right, well, good morning. My name is Attorney Brandy Reeves. I am the Deputy Chief Court Administrator here at the City of Atlanta Municipal Court. Alongside me, I have Assistant Attorneys Courtney Smith and Trevian Thompson. They have certainly saved the best for last. We're not going to keep you all very long, but we are going to give you all an in-depth overview of the court's role, the court's process in terms of administering code enforcement cases. Trevian and Courtney will present the bulk of the information. However, I may chime in as well as field any questions at the end of the presentation. So we'll go ahead and get started.
And Brandy, you might want to change your view. It's showing the
Okay, hold on one second.
Yeah, it's on the presenter view, so we are not.
Oh, you can see everything. Okay, hold on one second. Did that work?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Good morning. My name is Courtney Smith, and I am an attorney for the court, the municipal court. The municipal court does sit at 150 Barnett Street. And the first couple of things we're going to discuss are the divisions that are within the municipal court. There are currently 10 working divisions. We have the complex division. This division handles cases that involve drivers charged with reckless driving, lane drags, or like speeding 31 miles per hour and above. We also have the criminal division. This division handles all misdemeanor crime cases such as possession with marijuana, disorderly conduct, and fleeing and eluding. Third on the list is the DUI division. Under this division, they handle cases involving drivers under the influence of alcohol and other intoxicants. Next is the Housing and Code Enforcement Division. The Housing and Code Enforcement Division is responsible for all matters related to residential and commercial property that have allegedly violated the Atlanta Housing Code, the Commercial Maintenance Industrial Code, and the zoning ordinances. The Failure to Appear Division is also known as the FTA Division. And this is the division that handles cases where individuals have failed to appear to their scheduled court date. Next is the In Custody Division. This is where you have your first appearance for most individuals who have been arrested. During this first appearance, they will be made aware of the charges that are pending against them, and generally bond is usually set or discussed at this time. Restore Atlanta is a division that we have in our community court. Restore Atlanta handles quality of life crimes, crimes such as related to alcohol or low-level drug offenses. Normally how this works is that a municipal court judge will give a referral to the clinical program and to the homeless court. Next is the Traffic Division. This handles all cases under Title 40. And some of those offenses under Title 40 are like failure to obey a traffic control device, having expired registration, also known as expired tags, also not having any insurance on your vehicle, and driving with a suspended license or no license at all. The Parking Division handles all parking related offenses within the city of Atlanta. And last but not least, very important, is the School Bus Arm School Speed Zone Division. This handles any cases where drivers are have been involved with not stopping for the school bus, essentially passing the school bus when they have their arm out for you to stop, or they're in a school speed zone, maybe not realizing it, and they're going above the allotted speed. Currently, the municipal court has 10 judges that sit for them. Each judge on an average weekly basis see an average of 815 cases, and that's per judge. And on average, altogether between the 10 municipal court judges, they close 3,302 cases a week. So looking at a case from beginning to end, you'll start with your citation. This is issued by an officer of the law. And if you notice on the citation, their court date has been assigned, and that's based off the officer's availability of them being able to attend court. After you get your citation, you'll appear at your court date that was on the citation. It's also known as your arraignment date. At the arraignment, an individual has the option to plead guilty, nolo, or not guilty. And sometimes they're not able to do that at that moment. So then they'll set their case for a status update, which is usually 2 weeks out from the day of their arraignment. When they come back in those 2 weeks, they are able to resolve their case then by pleading guilty or not guilty. That means they're in compliance, or they will, if they're not in compliance with at their status update, then they will set their case for trial. Now, the trial date is usually set 30 days out from that 2-week status conference. And during that time you're waiting to have your trial, you will, the individual is entitled to discovery as well as legal representation. The primary goal of the court is to be in compliance with the law, to be and a couple of those highlights are that the court dates are set by the officer issuing the citation. There are public defenders available for those who cannot afford an attorney because they are entitled to legal representation. And that's because all cases, including housing and code cases, are criminal. The penalties act as punishment and deterrence, and they include monetary fines up to $1,000 and jail time up to a year. Looking at the pie graph, you'll notice that the traffic division is the bulk of the cases that we have on a yearly basis. We have about 99,695 cases a year just in the traffic division, and that's 72% of our cases a year. If you look further down, housing code is roughly, they see about 10,420 cases a year, and that's about 8% of the cases that we have in 1 year.
Now let's turn our attention to the Housing and Code Enforcement Division. Now, this division is responsible for all matters relating to the enforcement of residential and commercial properties that Atlanta Code of Ordinances, zoning regulations, Atlanta Housing Code, and the Commercial Maintenance Industrial Code. Now, these are just some of the type of cases under the Housing and Code Division. We deal with business licenses and permits, fire code, housing code, ensuring that they're in regulation, judicial in-rem proceedings and nuisance actions, public works, that deals with dumping and trash, vehicles for hire, those are your Ubers and your Lyfts, making sure that they're meeting the requirements to do so, watershed, that deals with theft and erosion, zoning buildings, commercial code in buildings, land disturbance and construction. Now, the bulk of our cases under the Housing and Code Division stem from dumping, trash, and debris, and that normally makes up about 34% of the Housing and Code enforcement cases, 13% of which makes up vacant and dilapidated buildings. Now, these are some of the cases that were opened or new cases that were filed in the fiscal year of 2022. Our fiscal year starts from July 1st through to June 30th. And so you can see on the chart that our numbers were higher in June of the fiscal year of 2022, with approximately 269 cases being opened or that were filed. The second highest was in December with 251 cases. Now, this chart shows the number of cases that were closed in the fiscal year of 2022. As you can see, the numbers are pretty much the same with the exceptions of November through December, and that is normally due to the holiday season. But as you can see in January, things pick back up and we've closed 227 cases that year.
Thank you, Trevian and Courtney. I think this is an appropriate time for me to step in as the Deputy Chief Court Administrator and kind of provide some more in-depth information regarding how the court processes the code enforcement cases. And what is extremely important for citizens and the NPUs to know equally is that essentially the court cannot move, cannot set cases, cannot calendar cases until such time as code enforcement has identified the correct property owner. Oftentimes, we receive complaints from citizens in that we've complained, we've sent multiple complaints, we've made multiple phone calls to code enforcement and nothing is being done. And I can tell you from the inside that code enforcement is absolutely trying. They will go out to the either commercial property or residential property. They will investigate once a call has been made. They will go out to that address and investigate, determine what the issues are, determine what some of the code violations are. After such time, they make all attempts to identify the appropriate property owner. Oftentimes, those property owners are companies that do not live in Atlanta. They may be residents who no longer live in Atlanta. They may be military staff who no longer live stateside. And so it causes a delay in code enforcement being able to personally serve these individuals. In order for the court to proceed or the solicitor's office to proceed, they must be able to, one, identify, and then two, personally serve the individual that is causing the nuisance, right? And so when code enforcement cannot identify that person, they cannot submit the ticket to the court. It is not until such time as code enforcement actually hand walks and delivers the ticket to our window here inside of the courthouse located at 150 Garnett Street, can the court then schedule the case for a hearing. At such time as code enforcement has been able to identify the property owner, they then turn in that citation. It may be a year later, it may be 6 months later, it may be 30 days or even a week. However long it takes for code enforcement to identify the property owner is what they do. Once that ticket is provided to the court logs that ticket into the court's case management system, and then assigns it to the appropriate judge. Here at Municipal Court, the Chief Judge Christopher Portis, is over the Housing and Code Violation Division here at the court. And so these cases are set before Your Honor at an appropriate time based upon the date and time provided by the code enforcement officer. At that time, that is when the solicitor's office becomes involved and the public defender is then assigned to a case if one is in fact requested and the defendant in fact qualifies financially for a public defender. From that point forward, kind of similar to what the public defender has already disclosed, it is at that time that they begin to negotiate, they being the city solicitor, code enforcement officer, and the public defender's office, begin to negotiate how the nuisance can be abated or how the code violation can be mitigated or removed completely. It is at that point that the court allows an opportunity for the defendant to then clear the violation. The court is not in the business of taking people's property or taking people's money. Again, the goal of the court is compliance, equality, and justice, and to ensure that all citizens can live reasonably within the city limits of Atlanta. And so after they have been given an opportunity to mitigate the nuisance or mitigate the damages that are being caused by their inability to keep their property, then the court will then begin to impose sanctions if they are non-compliant, or the city will then move to dismiss any cases that they believe are now up to compliance that now no longer need to be before the court. And generally speaking, that is how the court engages with code enforcement cases. We oftentimes see a lot of anger surrounding the properties of, as the PD has already mentioned, those individuals that are elderly. So you all can imagine once a young lady or a gentleman comes in trying to assist their mother or their father with answering to this summons, that the court becomes engaged in ensuring that this legacy resident or this elderly person is not displaced automatically because they were not able to keep the walls of their home together, or because a storm came through and they have not yet been able to provide the necessary funds to have their roof fixed. And so I want to be clear that, again, the court's job and the court's goal is to ensure compliance, is to ensure that everyone can live together in harmony, as utopic as they may sound, but to try to ensure that we're not displacing individuals from their homes, that we are not disturbing the neighbors by continuing any housing code violations, by allowing those to continue to grow and become even worse. And so I believe that this will probably conclude our presentation unless you all have any questions. I would not mind fielding any detailed questions you all may have.
I don't see any hands. Oh, literally no questions.
Well, that means we did a good job, ladies and gentlemen, or they're tired. I don't know.
That was really thorough. I guess there's nothing, we are now experts and we can teach the class next time, apparently.
Come on, but we have provided it. We tried to make the presentation as succinct as possible. I appreciate Ms. Terry letting us know that you all wanted to disseminate this information. And so we did try to make an attempt to include all the pertinent information on the slides. But similar to Mr. Days, if you all or if any of the residents or participants have any additional questions, feel free. I guess I'll add my name and number in the chat as well. And feel free to give me a phone call and we can address those accordingly.
Are there any other questions, y'all? This is like really the last call for questions. And Sam, do we have any closeout, or is this just like a may the Lord watch between me and thee moment in which what's the deal here? Oh, there you go. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so first of all, thank you all for participating in our virtual Code Enforcement Academy for this year, 2022. You all will receive an evaluation for this course for this class specifically following this closeout of this class, but also your certificates. We will try to get those to you, have them completed by the 19th of this month with signatures and all those things. As far as the rest of NPU University for the rest of the year, these are the last classes for this year. We have next week CP 1002, NPU 101, how does the NPU system work? That's Tuesday, November 15th at 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. via Zoom. And then we have actually a new course, CD 1004.003, Density Matters in Neighborhood Revitalization, which will be partnering with Invest Atlanta. And that is on Wednesday, November 30th, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. after the holiday. And our final course, which is actually in person, CD 1005, Urban Plan Academy for Community Leaders. And that's on a Saturday, December 10th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. To register or for more information about any of our courses, please visit www.npuatlanta.org, as well as follow us on social media at NPU Atlanta, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and also on Nextdoor under the City of Atlanta Neighborhood Planning Units account. Leah, do you have anything?
Yes, ma'am. I just want to add that Urban Plan Academy class is limited in size. Most of our online classes, we can take as many people as register, as will register, but for some of our classes, especially those that are in person, but even some of our other classes where we partner with other agencies or organizations to produce the class, our contract requires a limited number of folks. Urban Plan Academy is one of those classes. It is an absolutely amazing class. It's an in-person workshop where you're learning how to build a community, what goes into building or planning, more specifically, what goes into planning a community. Very, very helpful, especially for community leaders, but really for anyone who has an interest in planning your community. That class is not first come, first serve. It is a cohort type of a cohort model. So I believe there's an application and interview, if I remember. Yes. Okay. So there's an application and interview for that, but please do get your applications in as soon as they are released. My guess is that it'll probably be, if the class is December 10th, probably by November 10th. I think that's how we do it. But as soon as you see it, if you're interested, please jump on that as soon as possible, because it's limited. I think there's only 20 people allowed into that class. Yes, 20. Okay, only 20. So if you're interested in that, please do complete the application so we can get your interview scheduled ASAP. I was going to say something else. I don't remember. Oh, the survey. Samantha's going to send you a survey. I think an evaluation. I think she sends it after every class. I haven't said this in a minute, but oh, lovely. It's in the chat. So you can actually do it while I'm talking right now. It takes like 60 seconds, maybe 2 minutes. But listen, our funding is tied to the efficacy of this program. If we cannot demonstrate, I shouldn't say prove, but if we cannot demonstrate that people participate in NPU University, if we can't demonstrate that people benefit from NPU University, if we can't demonstrate positive feedback, and we also welcome negative feedback so that we can incorporate that into the program and make it better. Any sort of feedback you have, we definitely need to hear from you. So please, 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 every single NPU University class that you take, please complete the survey after that class. It literally takes seconds unless you want to give us more narrative, which we welcome. But you can take as little or as much time as you want with it. Please get that done. Don't be like me and procrastinate. Do it now. It only takes a few seconds, and we're giving you back 30 minutes. So you can literally do it now and still have the rest of your day. Thank you all so much. Thank you to the Municipal Court for joining us and for presenting. Thank you to all of you for participating in 5 whole weeks of this class. It's been awesome. Well, 10 weeks because it's every other week, but 5 classes, and we thank you for being here. Please keep in mind, as we've stated, every single week, you will only get a certificate if you've been on camera for each class, if you've attended each class on time and stayed for the whole class. I think there might have been some exceptions, but that was in your introductory information that you received from Sam several weeks ago. So I think that's it for me. Enjoy your day. Cabbagetown Chomp and Stomp Festival is today. I'll be over there. I hope to run into some of you over there. A couple folks from our team will be there as well. That's over by Krog Street Tunnel over there somewhere in Cabbagetown. It's free unless you want to sample the chili. It's like $10 to get a spoon, but definitely support these neighborhoods. If your neighborhood is doing something, let us know. We want to support your neighborhood as well. We will see you soon. Thank you so much for being here. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Be safe, and be safe. Bye. Love y'all. Thank you, Samantha.
No worries.